So you've been using the Wix Forum app, and as you've probably seen, that app is going to be deprecated, and the data from the app will also be of limited access in the very near future. Welcome back to the Wix Wiz. I'm Eitan, and today we're going to be talking about how you can extract the data from your Wix Forum app to go and use in some other location. We're going to be talking about two different approaches. One more simple approach with a CSV download, and a more complex but robust approach, which will utilize the forum and comments APIs to really extract all the data from your forum in JSON format. If you want to learn how to do all that and more, let's get started. For today's demo, we are actually inside of the Wix Wiz website. The reason being that Wix has currently removed the Wix Forum app from the Wix app market. So unless you've already installed it on a site previously, there's no way to currently install that app on a new site. So I can't really create a site just for demoing this out. I have to use a site that already has Wix Forum. And today, again, just to recap, our goal is to extract the data from our Wix Forum so that we can go ahead and use it in an alternative, possibly the alternative that I'm providing as the Wix Wiz. But regardless of where you want to migrate your forum to, you probably want to preserve the data in some way or another. So in order to do that and not lose all your data next year towards the deadline, or even not to lose the ability to manipulate your data once access to the forum is limited in terms of API, creating posts, etc., which is on October 15th, if I'm not mistaken, of 2025. So in order to avoid all of that, we want to extract the data from our forum ASAP. And I'm going to discuss two approaches to that. So the first one has to do with where I am now, which is inside of the CMS section of the dashboard. And this is going to be the easier approach, the no-code approach for people who don't want to really fumble around with using APIs and stuff. There are some downsides to this approach, and I'll talk about them and why it's still important to be knowledgeable of the other approach and other option. But here you can see inside of the CMS, I'm here in the Wix app collection section. You can see it if you kind of scroll down to the bottom. It may be collapsed, but you can just expand it. If you don't happen to see the Wix app collections, just double check here inside of more actions. And you can find here the advanced settings. And inside the advanced settings, you'll have the option to toggle on the Wix app collection. So that's if you don't see the Wix app collections at all. You could also try activating dev mode inside of the editor, but it shouldn't be too hard to gain access to these collections. Once you have access to these collections, you'll see that these are essentially where all the data from the different Wix apps are stored. So among forum, there's also blog, booking, stores, etc. And once we expand the forum here, we can see that the data of the forum is essentially stored in three collections. One is the categories, the other is the posts, and the third is the comments. And if we go, for example, here into the posts collection, then we can see that this contains essentially all of the data regarding specific posts. And I say all the data, put a little asterisk on that because I'll explain in a moment why it's not all the data. But you can see here, for example, we have the content of the post kind of in plain text, and we have a slug, we have a title, etc. Okay, so that's what we have here inside of these collections. If you go into manage fields, yeah, the only things that are hidden here are the ID and created date, which you can gain access to as well. But this is essentially the data that we can gain from this collection. So the no-code approach to extracting our data from the Wix forum would be to essentially go here to more actions and export as CSV. Okay, this will essentially download all the data that you see here in this collection as a CSV file, and then you can go ahead and take that and do whatever you'd like with it. You can do the same for the other two collections. So for the categories and the posts, which you can see right over here. So forum, so for categories and comments, you can do the same thing. Just go ahead and download those collections. This has some downsides to it. One is that there is a lot of data that is not accessible in this way via the collections directly and is only accessible via API. So let's go ahead and take a look at the API because I think it'll highlight what we don't really have access to in terms of just the data here inside of the collections. So if we go over here, I'm currently using the SDK, and that's because the SDK, the JavaScript SDK, exposes certain access that the Velo API actually doesn't give us. And it's actually the critical information that we couldn't get just from downloading the collections. So just for example, if we go here to the query posts endpoint, you can see here also the deprecation warning. So it says this method will be deprecated October 15th. It's hard to know exactly what that means in terms of deprecated. Maybe it just isn't being supported anymore, or access may completely be blocked. I'm not sure. But essentially what this does is allows you to programmatically get the data from the posts collection, but it also allows you to get additional information that's not there inside of the collection. So if we take a look here at the options, you can see here that there is an option here for extra fields. Okay, so once I expand that, this is essentially an array of different fields that we can request when we're requesting the post data that we wouldn't really have access to just from downloading the collection. So for example, the images from the post content. I'm not sure exactly what reaction identities are, and it doesn't sound so important to me, but this one right here, rich content, is actually critical. So this would essentially give us the content of the post in rich content format. This would mean that, for example, if you had a post that's mixed with text, images, videos, code, etc., you would get that entire structure provided to you instead of just the plain text extracted out in a string, okay, which would make it very hard to replicate that post, either using a Wix rich content element or using some third-party software, maybe translating it from Wix rich content to whatever they can present. But without getting access to this rich content data structure, the data from your forum, especially the posts and comments, are not really as useful. So that's really the highlight here of using the API. There are a few other things that we can get. So the next thing I really want to do with you is hop in and see how we can utilize the API in order to extract the data from our forum. Let's start off with using the query categories method in order to get all the categories from our forum. In order to execute this code, I'm using a .web.js file inside of the Wix backend. And I just called it here forum extract demo. And you can see here it comes with some boilerplate code. We can get rid of most of this over here. And the reason I'm doing it here is because this will essentially allow us to execute the functions over here in the backend. And once you extract the data, it's really up to you what you want to do with it. You can also build like a more elaborate structure where this data would then be sent somewhere else. It really depends on what your goals are. I'm just going to show a basic extraction using the APIs without kind of a next step. So let's go ahead and copy over this function that we have right over here inside of the demo. And I'm going to head back over here to my backend, and I'm going to put that right over here. I'm going to move this import all the way up to the top. So I'm going to put it right over here. And the first thing you'll notice is that there's a squiggly red line here, and that's because we need to install this package, the Wix/forum. Because we're using the JavaScript SDK and we're not using Velo, it's not installed automatically. Luckily, we have this quick install option right over here, and that's going to install in the background while we continue. So here we have this query categories function, and what I'm going to do here from the function is I'm just going to return the response. And there we go. So I'm returning the response, and then here inside of this web method, I'm going to call this web method extract forum data. And it's not going to take any parameters here, But for now, what we're going to do is I'm just going to return this query categories. So I'm going to say await query categories. And I'm just going to turn this into an asynchronous function right over there. And now we're ready to do our first test. So I'm going to go over here and just click on this play button, and that will take us to the functional testing area where I could just hit run. And that should show us the output of that web method, which we can see right over here. So if I expand that, we see we get back all the categories and we get back a lot of data over here. And although I didn't show you the categories collection, I think if you compare the data that you have here, you may find that there's some data that you get back via the API that you didn't get back via the collection when you just download it as a CSV. Let's try this out now with the post, which is really kind of the flesh of your forum. So if we go over here, let's just look for the posts API itself. So here we have query posts, and I'm just going to, like we did with the categories, I'm just going to copy this over and head back here to our backend. And I'm going to put that function just right under the other function that we brought in before. So we don't need to re-import everything. We could just copy this part of the import and put it up here on top alongside the categories, just like that. And we can get rid of this import right over here. And like we did with the query categories, I'm just going to return the response. And here inside of our extract forum data web method, I'm just going to switch this out from query categories to query posts. And if I go now into my extract forum data, get rid of this, and just go and run this again, then now we should get the posts back. So let's take a look. And so here you can see now it's returning the posts. And at the moment, just kind of eyeballing it, it does seem like we're getting some stuff back that weren't in the collection. But we aren't getting back everything that we want because we didn't pass in that option which asks for the extra fields. So if we go over here to options, we have this extra fields. So let's go ahead and add that in. And it's going to be an array. And I'm actually going to pass in just all of the things that we have here because I just really want as much data as possible. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to head back over here, and here inside of the query posts function, so instead of passing the options like that, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that parameter, and I'm going to declare a new variable, which I'm going to call options. And in here, we're going to have the extra fields. I think it was called, right? And here we're going to have an array. And let's take a look here at which fields we have. So we have images. Let me see if I could just kind of grab all this. It'll be a little sloppy, but at least I won't have to go back and forth kind of between the docs. So let's just paste that right over here. And these are going to need to be strings. So we're going to let me just grab everything from here. And then we're going to put it in here as a string. Okay, like that. And an array of strings, of course. So put it inside of double quotes or single quotes, and then a comma after each one. So let's also put this reaction identities in. And I'm just going to go one by one and put them all in. Rich content. Okay, that's really the, I think, kind of the golden nugget here of this whole approach. I'm just going to put that in there. Let me grab this unknown. I'm not sure exactly what unknown would pass, actually. Not so clear to me what that one is specifically. URL, gonna put that in there, and videos, just like that. Okay, so ideally, what I'm hoping is going to happen is that this will just return our posts, but with all the extra data that we could possibly get back with it. So let's go ahead and try and rerun our functional testing here and see if we get back that data. So I'm going to go ahead and hit run. And we got it back. It took a little longer. I don't know if it's related, but let's see here. So let's see what we have here. So first of all, I think this URL wasn't there before. You'll notice that we have this content field now. This is the rich content. You can see that it's not just text, but it's actually like a JSON object with different nodes. And if you want to understand more about this, you can read up about Ricos, RICOS, or the Wix. Just search like Wix rich content or stuff like that on Google, and you'll learn more about this method that Wix uses for storing rich content. It's the same approach that it uses, let's say, for blog posts and other places on your website where you might have rich content. So that's what we have over here. Let's see in terms of images. So it could be that this specific post just doesn't have any images or reaction identities, etc. But you can see here, let's see if I can find a post that happens to have some images. Yeah, so this one you'll see has images, and it gives it back to us as a Wix image. So if you take this and you put this in the browser, nothing's really going to happen. So you have to transform this from this format into a different format that allows you to access it from, like, as a public URL. I don't want to dive into it too deeply now. If you're curious about it, you can write in the comments below, and I'll try and address that maybe in another video. But you could also probably find some information if you just do a quick Google search. So that's what we have here. So you see here that we got back more data than we could potentially get if we just downloaded the data as a CSV. So that's really what we get here from the posts. And one thing that you will probably want to do when you're getting the posts is to get all of the posts. So at the moment, you can see that it came back with 10 posts. And there's some metadata here, which is count 10, offset 0. Okay. And total 203. So there are 203 posts, but we only got back 10. So we can, when we're doing the query, we have the option to pass in, except for just the extra fields, we have the option to pass in paging. So we have a limit and we have an offset. So ideally, if you have a lot of posts, then you'll probably want to raise the limit to as much as possible, and then utilize the offset to run the query multiple times. So let me just show you how that would happen. So I'm going to go in over here, and I'm going to first set the limit over here to 100 inside of the options. And then in terms of the offset, basically what we're going to want to do is try and make this recursive. So we're going to run this once, get back the amount returned from the metadata, and then set that as the offset for the next time. So what I'm going to do here inside of the query posts is I'm going to have an offset just like that, and I'm going to put the offset over here. So the first time we run, we won't have an offset, so I hope that that doesn't throw an error. Let's see if that gives me an issue. Limit offset is not assignable. I did something wrong, I think. Yeah, okay, so it needs to go under paging. Okay, that's my bad. So over here, instead of just having the limit just like that, we're going to have a paging property, and then this is going to go inside there. Okay, so just pay attention to the warnings here. Let's see. Types of property extra field are incompatible. Type string is not assignable to field with literals. Okay, I think that that warning is related to the extra fields, which we saw was working, so I'm not going to be too concerned about it. Yeah, so this should be what we need in terms of the paging. And I'm going to change our extract forum data function a bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say const post query result equals to, equals to await post query result, query posts. And then what I'm going to say is, so once we get back this post query result, as we saw, kind of thinking on the fly here a little bit. So we got back metadata, right? So we got back count offset total. Okay, so let's say, let me think about how we're going to do this. So let's say we want to aggregate all of our posts. So here we can say let all posts equals an empty array. Okay, just like that. And then once we get back the first query result, what we'll do is we'll say all posts equals 2, and I'll spread in here all posts, and also spread in post query result dot posts, like that. And then once we have that, then we're going to want to check. So we'll say const, and we'll say here that the total, and we're going to have offset, and we're going to have count equals to posts query result dot metadata. And now basically what we want to do is we want to check if we got back all of the posts that we should have. So we'll say here that if all posts is bigger, if all posts dot length is bigger than total, then we're going to want to run our query again, essentially. And then what we'll do here is we'll say, let's say const next page results equals to await query posts. And here we're going to want to set an offset. Now, how much of an offset are we going to want to set? So we will want to set an offset. I think we should base it off of the length of all posts. So we don't actually need this offset and count probably. So, sorry. If all post.length is bigger than count, so this needs to be the other way around. If the total, okay, total is all the posts that we have in our collection. All post.length is the post that we've aggregated so far. So if the amount of all the posts is more than, it's a little confusing because all posts and total, but if the total amount of posts in the collection is bigger than the all posts, which is the, let's call it aggregated posts. Let's call it aggregated posts, just to make it make more sense. Okay, so if the total amount of posts in the collection is bigger than the aggregated amount of posts that we've aggregated so far, then we're going to want to run this again. And what should our offset be? Our offset should be the amount of posts that we've aggregated so far. Offset, essentially, what offset means, I don't think I explained this, but offset means when we get the next page of data, when we get the next set of posts in the query, where should we start from? So let's say in the first time we got 0 to 100, and then if we have an offset of 100, then from the next time it should get from 101 to 200. It's a little hard to know if the offset starts from the number that you pass as the offset or the next number, but that's something that we could easily figure out just with a little experimentation. So what I'm going to pass in here as the offset is aggregated posts.length, like that. And once we get the next page results, so we're going to want to say that aggregated posts equals 2, and we're going to spread in aggregated, not permissions, but aggregated posts. And we're going to spread in the next page results dot posts. Now, this is almost done. What this does for now is it runs this twice. Okay, so if we didn't get it all in the first time, then it'll run it one more time. But what we want to do is we actually want to continue running this until this is no longer true. So the way we can do that is instead of using an if over here, we can actually just switch this out for a while loop. Okay, so that means that this will run, okay, this logic will run until this is no longer true. Okay, which means that the aggregated post.length is equal to the total. You always have to be a little careful when you're doing while loops because it's very easy to enter an infinite loop if you do have something a little wrong here with the logic. But I'm gonna risk it. Let me add in here some console logs. So here we can have console.log aggregated. Let's just have the aggregated posts. And let's do that again over here. So we can just keep track of the progress of how this is progressing as it goes through. So let's go ahead and give it a try. And then, what we're going to want to do here at the end, the very end is we'll return the aggregated posts. Okay, just like that. Okay, now we're really ready to give it a try. So I'm going to go ahead and clear this out, and I'm going to hit run. And if the video crashes, then you know we entered an infinite loop, and I probably had to figure it out. So let's go over here, and let's see what we have here. So we have, these are our aggregated posts, and you can see it's an array with 203 items, which is exactly what we expected. Okay, so this ran essentially 3 times, if I'm not mistaken. Ran twice. How did it only run twice? So this is the first console log. So this first we got back 100, and then the second time we already had 103 somehow. So I would have expected it to run 3 times. I don't see that it ran 3 times, but the total amount looks correct. So I'm going to call this a win. If you run into issues, let me know in the comments and we can figure it out together. So that's that. And the last thing that I want to show you is how to get the comments for the posts, because that's actually an equally important part of a forum, is actually the responses to people's posts. I mean, that's the whole point of a forum. And the way that Wix Forum is built is it actually utilizes a separate set of APIs for the comments. So Wix has like a generic set of APIs for comments, and it's used in several different apps. And you could also use it in your own apps that you develop for Wix. So there's like a separate comments app, and I think it might even be used for Wix reviews in Wix stores and stuff like that. So let's hop in and see exactly how to utilize the separate set of APIs for comments to get the comments for your forum. Here we are in the Wix comments API inside the SDK still. And you can see that it's a completely separate section that doesn't belong specifically to Wix Forum. And inside the intro to the comments API itself, you can see that there are instructions for using it with different applications. So I see Wix stores is not here, as I said, but Wix blog is, Wix groups, and Wix comments, Wix forum. So basically it's its own comment engine that can be kind of like hooked onto different things, and Wix utilizes it for Wix forum. And each app has its own app ID, which I think will be important in terms of actually querying the comments. So let's take a look at some of the actual methods here. And we have here, so we have get comment, and we have here query comments. Okay, this is probably going to be what's going to power our retrieval of all of our comments. So I'm going to go ahead and copy that over initially, just like we did with the others. And I'm going to put that right over here on the bottom under our existing functions. And here, so this is actually its own separate package because it's its own API. So I'm going to go ahead and install that. And I'm going to move this line of code for the import up here on top, just because I like to have all my imports on top. So while that installs, let's see what other changes we might need to make here to the query comments function in order to make it work for us. So at the moment, there's no real indication to this function of what comments it should be retrieving. Should it be retrieving comments for the blog or for the forum? So I imagine that's going to be part of the arguments that need to be passed in here. So let's take a look at the documentation to understand that a little better. So if we take a look over here, so we see that the app ID needs to be passed in as a parameter here. So let's go back to the comments intro and let's grab the app ID for forum. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that right over there, head back and go into our query comments function. And I'll say here const forum app ID and put that right there, store that in a variable and pass that in right over here, forum app ID. And since that was the only required parameter, that should already get us started. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to return items, just like that. And over here, up on top, I'm going to comment out our code for the retrieval of posts for now, just so we can utilize this same web method, because I'm lazy and I don't want to write a lot of web methods. And here I'm just going to return query, not categories, but comments, just like that. And we can have here await, so we get the result. Awesome. So let's go ahead and do some functional testing to see initially what comes back from the comment query. So I'm going to go ahead and run. And let's see. So we got, okay, permission denied. So we might need to run an elevate here. So let's go over here and see if they already have a pre-built one that I can use so I don't have to write it all myself. Let's go ahead and see here. So query comments. And here we have query comments with elevated permissions. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that over and go right over here. And let's paste that so we can just make our adjustments. So the first thing that you'll see here is that we have import auth from Wix add essentials. Elevation, just in a nutshell, is a way to change the nature of a certain API method so that it's run as if it's being run by an admin or somebody that has the permissions for that. So it's just kind of like a way to circumvent any permission restrictions that you might have on any of the methods. So I'm just going to go ahead and install this Wix Essentials package. I'm going to move it up on top, just right over here. And I'm going to get rid of the duplicate import for Wix comments. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this out over here. So here we have, interesting. So here they pass in the query itself and the app ID, which is interesting. Okay, let's go ahead and grab this. So I'm going to move this over here. It's interesting. It's not how a typical elevate works. So that's why you see me kind of squinting here. Let me move this over here. Yeah, let's try this for now. I don't know why they passed the query in there like that. Let's see, do they have an example here? Interesting. No. Okay, let's see if my way works. If it does, awesome. If not, then we'll try and rethink it. So basically now we're working with an elevated version of the query comments. So let's try again to run this functional testing. Yeah, and that worked. Okay. So let's go ahead and check this out. So here you can see we get back the data from the comments. And we can see here the content, and here the rich content comes automatically, probably because this is like a slightly more, I think it's a newer API, so Wix probably already caught on to the fact that they want to be using rich content for certain things. So just the whole API was engineered in with a different approach. That's why you get the rich content kind of like off the shelf here, and you don't need to specify that you want the rich content. But there we go. So here we have all the comments, and the context ID, if I'm not mistaken, that would probably be the post ID. I think there was an explanation here in the introduction. So you see here context ID. They explain to you like what these different IDs are that come back. So context ID is the forum post ID. And the resource ID is also the forum post ID. So if you want to know kind of which post a certain comment belonged to, then you can use either the context ID or the resource ID. And this will be important for eventually with whatever you do with your forum data. You'll probably want to reconstruct it in a way that the posts are associated with the categories, which had category IDs, and that the comments are associated with the relevant posts. So that would be done here through the context ID and the resource ID. In terms of pagination, so you'd probably want to do something similar to what we did with the posts. I won't do it again here because it's a little repetitive. But essentially, when we get back the query result, so now we're just returning the items. But let's say instead of returning the items, let's have here, let's say the result of the query. So result, and I'll return here result. And if I run this again, then we should see like all the metadata pertaining to this particular query. So here you can see that we have the items, which is what we were looking at before, but we also have some other metadata, such as next cursor, cursors. So typically cursors are something that you'd use to get the next batch of data. And if we take a look over here, so we see here cursors, but I couldn't really find a place where you're supposed to use that cursor. But I do see here that on the query result, it says that it has a next method, even though I don't see it exposed here in the result that we got. But theoretically, we would be able to call the next method on the query result to get the next batch. So let me just do like a quick example of that. It won't be a full-fledged demo, but we'll do a quick example. So let's say here we query the comments and we return the result. So over here, instead of just returning directly, let's go ahead and say const first result equals to await query comments. And then we'll say here that, why is that giving me an error? I'm not sure. Okay, just a bug. And then here we'll say const second result equals to await query comments, await first result dot next. Okay, just like that. And you also saw that there was a has next method. So that has next would be to check if there is a next batch. And then here we could just log, let's say console dot log first result, just like that. And we can add a similar log just for second results right over here. First result, second result, just like that. And what I'll return at the end, just so you can see, is return second result dot has next. So this will return essentially if there's a next for this second result as well. Again, this isn't a full implementation. It's just like a quick demo. So let me go ahead and run this now. Yeah, so returned with true. That means that there were more than there are more queries to be run. So there aren't just 100 different. There aren't just 100 comments in the whole collection. There are more than 100 comments. And here we got back the first result with items, and you can see that the item here is different than. So let's say the content here. Yeah, I can go into it and see like that the content's different, but Yeah, you can trust me. The first result is different than the second result. You can see that the second result also has like a prev cursor, like for the previous set of results that came back. And you can implement the same kind of like while loop logic and an aggregating array, etc., to gather all the comments. You can also raise the limit on the query, like we did, just so that you're getting 100 at a time and not just 50 at a time to make it a little quicker. That is pretty much all I got for you in terms of extracting your data from the Wix Forum app. Remember to do it quickly because there's not a lot of time left. And let me know in the comments what you're thinking of doing with the data. If you're interested in trying out the new app that we developed that's in alpha, you can always head to thewixwiz.com/forum app and check it out, play around. It's probably a little buggy right now, but hopefully with your input and feedback, it will get much better, and it's free to use. So yeah, thanks for watching. Don't forget to give a thumbs up if you enjoyed, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this every week. And I'll see you next time.